Hello, this is just an overview of the coursework for COMP5000 for this year. So the coursework must be submitted electronically using the online submission facility on the DLE, and you can be in groups of up to 4 students. You have to include just your student IDs on the submission, and I'll distribute the marks across all the students who sign. I'm not going to put anyone in any groups. I just assume you're going to be, say, in the same groups as in, say, Luciana's coursework. So the actual description of the coursework is there's a local delivery service of take-out food from restaurants, and they're storing all the information in CSV files, kind of Excel files, but they want to be stored in a database. So on the DLE there are 2 files, orders.csv and restaurant.info. So orders.csv contains information about the orders, and then the restaurant.info contains information about the restaurants. So the tasks are to design a database, to store the database, store the files, convert the information in the CSV files into the database. So you should design using an entity relationship diagram, as we discussed. And you have to draw a diagram using the either MySQL workbench or this link here, the app.diagram.net, or you can email me if there's another graphical patch you want to do. So we've discussed in Res lectures normalization, so the design should follow the 3rd normal form, and there should be an SQL schema for the tables, and that should be produced and included in the kind of little report. So there are some kind of design choices you made in the database. So you have the CSV files when we look at them, and you should have a right to short discussion in the report. So once you design the database, you should write a Python script to read in the CSV files and populate the relational database in SQLite. It could be there are missing values or incorrect values, and you'll have to deal with that in your code, and you should deal that with your code and also discuss it in a little report. And finally, you have to write a little GUI, a graphical user interface. We used tkinter, and the tasks are to input the manager specific to a restaurant, and then there's also, you want to check that the format of the email is correct. And also, so in the GUI, when you input stuff, I want to see it's correct, so I want to see a kind of screenshot of you inputting the information, and then I also want to see that that actually in the database the information is correctly entered. And then there should be additional buttons in the GUI that you can calculate the mean customer rating food for each restaurant, and also drawing a histogram of delivery time for all orders. And you should show screenshots for all these things. Then later on, then the manager, so there's some information in the CSV files, but the manager of the project, he's interested in, there's no information about the drivers who are doing the food deliveries, and he'd like that to be in. So I ask you to update the design to include information about the delivery staff. You don't have to include any coding for that, it's just updating the design. Okay, so so some of the design choices and written stuff should be written in a document in PDF or Word. You don't need to include references, it's not like an academic document. But it should be written in good English. The document should contain the entity relationship diagram, the SQL schema, information about the data cleaning, and screenshots of the GUIs working. Also, I'd like to see all the Python code. You can upload that either as Jupyter notebooks or text files, however you do it, and you can use a useful utility called zip to include them all together. That's sort of the high-level overview of what I'm asking you to do. I've also written a document to a short presentation on the different tasks. So here it is. So the idea is there's a local delivery service for takeout food from restaurants, wants to develop the database to store the information in the orders. Currently, information is stored in CSV files, but they want the files to be stored in a database. So the task can be broken down into stages. First, you want to design a database from the CSV files and various design decisions. Then you should go on to writing Python code to convert the CSV file into SQLite database file. And finally, once the database is set up, you should write a GUI to do the include the manager and print the histogram and do this simple statistical analysis. And the idea is that you've seen bits of examples of this in the lectures and the computer lab exercises. So it's really just an issue of combining all those things together. Okay, so what's the first step? The first step really is to look at the CSV files, which you can download from the DLE. And the column headings will give you some ideas of the entities and a first design of the database. Then you have to do things like select which columns are the primary key, foreign keys, and then from your initial design you have to start on some normalization and some design choices to clean up the design. Okay, so here's the restaurant info. So this is what the kind of spreadsheet looks like. So we have like a restaurant ID, restaurant name, cuisine, zone, categories, manager, an address, email, years as manager. So these column names will give you some idea of the entities, and from that you're going to create an entity relationship diagram. Okay, and this is the other file. So this is the orders. You have a customer, so the restaurant ID, which tells you what restaurant they order from, what the date is, the number of items, and the amount of money, and various payment details. So these things at the top is going to give you some idea of the initial design of the entity relationship diagram. Okay, so look at that. So this is what I suggest. Look at the CSV files, look at the column headings, and this will give you some idea of the entities and give you a draft design of the database. So if you look in lecture 5, there's an introduction to entity relationship diagrams. There's also perhaps a useful example on reverse engineering from a CSV file to an ER diagram. Lecture 3 discusses relationships between entities. And at some stage you're going to need a diagram, so I've made a little podcast here which shows how to use one of the tools. And one of the things I ask you to do is to look at database normalization. So one of the key things in relational databases is the fact that one piece of information should be in one place, and in database jargon this is known as normalization, and that's discussed in lecture 7. Okay, and this file will be available on the DLE if you want to click on the links. Okay, so that's the first step. Then after you've done the design, you have to do some coding to load the CSV files into a table in the database. So I suggest you use the pandas library to load the data from the CSV files and do some cleaning. And we discussed in lecture 8 an introduction to cleaning up data with pandas. And then in lecture 9, so here's a link to some examples, converting pandas into converting pandas to data frame, which are led from the CSV files into a table, into a SQLite data file. So these are the kind of parts of the course where we discussed data cleaning and converting pandas into an SQLite data file. Okay, so and the final bit is writing a GUI, graphical user interface. So in lecture 5, there were some examples of writing a GUI to work with data, and also in the lab exercises for that week and the solutions. And then in lecture 6, there's an example of using Python to send SQL commands to a database. And there's also down here a podcast on inserting data into an SQLite database. Okay, so you can kind of see that the tasks can be broken down into just combining parts of the code and examples that I've shown you on the module, and then just build that up into solutions. Okay, anyway, I wish you good luck.